We are here this afternoon to go through the mighty Parramatta Eels, my personal team, and there's quite a bit of interest around them this year with guys like Hopgood must-have territory, and we'll talk about him a bit later. Also, a couple of new guys who there's a bit of uncertainty, but potentially some good cash cows to go through. Jamie?
Beautiful. That's a good start there, Scoop. We've got a very tough draw to kick it off, actually. You've got the Storm Sharks, Seagulls, probably with Tommy, and then you've got Panthers, Roosters to kick off that first 5 rounds. So just be aware of that when you're looking at attacking plays, that there might be some lower, closer games. And some of our middles and edges, probably not too much of a worry for him, but probably just a drop in that attacking stats. You know, if you've got those try scorers, just be aware of them to kick off this one with the Eels. So Jacob Arthur to start us off, he just sits at a nice low price at all times, doesn't he?
Yeah, he's sort of that mixed half hooker role that he played last year. Not really going to be relevant unless there's injury, I'd say. But depending on how many minutes Hodgson will play, it'll either be Rain or him, I'd say. He'll take the remainder. I still don't think that'll be enough for him to be relevant, though.
Yeah, agreed. We've got Dejan Arce who comes over, and he's pretty expensive, so really not much to say about him until he gets a little bit cheaper. Potentially could play in the halves, but they do have Jacob Arthur, I'd say, would be ahead of him, but he would be there to cover that Dylan Brown role. Wagga Blake, a few people actually have mentioned that he could actually do okay. He's a very awkward price at 402. The 28 average is a little bit annoying. Do we see much change with him?
No, I think somebody on TK's podcast mentioned Wagga Blake as being a bit of an option. I just don't really see it, especially not with those first 5 rounds. I think there's plenty of value to be found elsewhere.
Yeah, Dylan Brown at 751. He was a shining light for a lot of our teams last year and was a little bit annoying at times for someone that we thought was going to be super consistent. He had some weird 30s games and kind of regularly at times, and then he would hit those 60s and 70s at the back end of the year. Probably a little bit too overpriced at this point, would you say?
Yeah, just a fraction. I don't mind him compared to a few halves, but he is a little bit more expensive than, say, your Jackson Hastings. You can save a little bit of cash and have a bit safer role. I think Dylan Brown's a little bit more fixture-proof than Mitchell Moses, but I still wouldn't really be looking at him at this point of the year.
Yeah, so let's look at that then. So maybe potentially a time to pick up Moses and Brown could be from round 6. Would you look at it maybe as a potential option from then? If they, most likely they do hold their value, they could drop a tiny bit. But if they were to drop a little bit, could you look at them maybe in round 6 for like a 6 or 7 round burst?
100%. I've been looking especially at Moses for that reason. Moses seems to be a little bit more up and down depending on the difficulty of the opposition he plays. I reckon there's a very good chance that I go to Moses in about round 7 at maybe 100k cheaper than his starting price and ride him through probably all the way to round 14. Now, one interesting thing is that the Eels have a pretty late bye, and because there's so many players that are really relevant in the halves out with a bye or with Origin in round 13, Mitchell Moses and Jackson Hastings and Dylan Brown are probably the top 3 guys in the halves positions for that round. Maybe Fogarty gets in there as well. So I reckon it's not a bad shout to get at least one Eels half in for that easier run.
Yeah, so 6 all the way through the end of round 13. Move them on for that middle period because they've got a few buys in there. Yeah, very interesting. I don't mind that. So Mitch Moses, he's priced pretty well the exact same as Brown. And I think, just base it off who's that little bit cheaper because they'll both score pretty well. Mitch Moses is a bit more of the flat track bully, as you mentioned there. I think that's a good idea. Let's move up to, we've got Nathan Brown. He comes in a bit cheaper. Is he just a little bit irrelevant at this point?
Yeah, I really don't know what's going on with Nathan Brown. He didn't play for a huge chunk of last year until pretty much the finals. And I think there were rumours that he might even be going to the Tigers to play lock and that Marty Tapau might be coming. I just think there's no real reason to pick him.
Yeah. Campbell Gillan had some interest in certain years, priced at 40 there. Do we see much improvement for him?
Nah, he has scored okay in previous years, but I don't think there's really that much interest. He might score a little better, but there's nothing jumping out at you saying that there's a good reason why he'll improve from that from that 40 average.
Yeah, I agree. And the Cardi Party, there's a chance that he gets some time on that edge. Do we think that he even gets that role or no?
Oh, I would love it if the Cardi Party came back to relevancy. He can be fun to own, frustrating but fun.
Yeah.
I think at the moment Matt Dury has the spot to lose, but Cartwright was one of the 4 named in preseason to be competing for that vacant spot left by Isaiah Papali'i.
Yeah, who are the other guys you're looking at there to compete for that role? You've got Dury, you've got Cartwright. We have Sean Lane on one edge. Madison potentially still fighting for it? Or do you think he's sort of locked into that middle role now?
Yeah, I think from indications from training, we know that he misses those first 3 weeks of the season through suspension because he took the suspension instead of the fine for some reason. But I reckon there's a good chance that he'll play that sort of 50, 60-minute impact role from the bench. He was absolutely devastating fantasy-wise and NRL-wise when he did that last year and averaged high 50s, which was pretty spectacular. I think Hopgood will keep that lock. Ryan Madison will do that impact role. And either Dury, Cartwright, Murchie, and I think it might have been Momasia had a chance to do it. I think Dury's the front runner at the moment.
Yeah, so let's talk about those middle minutes then. So we're looking at Madison. I'd say, yeah, you agree that probably at least that 50, 55, 60 kind of minutes there. Do we see those type of minutes for Hopgood? Do we see those minutes because guys like Campbell Gillard and Junior Polo there are probably going to be that 40 to 50, 55 minute type of guys? Is that how we're seeing the minutes come about? Because or are we just going for low minute bench guys?
I think at the moment, Hopgood is pretty much a buy because Madison is out for those first 3 weeks and he'll basically get a really big minute lock roll for at least 3 weeks, potentially good minutes at least from the bench, but possibly still starting when Madison's back. He's probably one of the safest options you can go for this year. And he had a ridiculous average, like over 60 in New South Wales Cup. He loves his offloads. He loves his tackle breaks. I think the Panthers were a little bit sad to lose him, to be honest.
Yeah, he'd definitely be a good one. They've got so many guys, don't they, with Eisenhuth and these type of middles. So it made sense why he looked to find a spot elsewhere, which he will get that opportunity. And that's a great point that, you know, with Madison out, I thought there was some chat that he was going to overturn that or change that. I'm assuming he couldn't do that. But yeah, that first 3 weeks is going to be hectic because he did get those massive minutes and got over 60 at the end of last year. So yeah, I think we just got to lock Hopgood in. He's going to be too highly owned anyway. And Madison, we could probably just see what happens when he returns as to, you know, when he could be an option, what kind of minutes he's going to get. Does his role change across the year? But yeah, at 50, he got a 54 average off the bench, which is pretty crazy. So that's that with him. Matt Dury, let's speak about him. So if he does get that role, are we just locking him in everyone's side as well?
I think so. There's a chance that he doesn't play 80 once Madison's back, but he's got 3 weeks to have a good shot at that role potentially, and then still decent minutes on that edge. So by the time Madison's come back, there's every chance he's made 80, 100K. And then as he slows down and peaks a couple of weeks later, maybe as the end of that tough Eels run comes and he finishes that massive potential tackle stats, I guess, higher than usual, he'll look to move him on. But at base price, starting edge, there's not a lot of reasons why you wouldn't buy someone doing that.
Yeah, and just be aware, he probably still doesn't get the 80 if you've got guys like Murchie on the bench and stuff like that. I imagine he'll take a few of those minutes, but still 50 minutes plus, he'll be sweet at that price. Yeah, you can't go wrong, and you can probably start him in your top 17 as well. Okay, we've got Dunster. What do we much to say about Dunster this year?
Surprisingly, there actually might be, because I think Bailey Simonson isn't quite back from an injury or isn't going to be back for round one. So there's potential that either Sean Russell or Hayes Dunster will start on that right wing for the Eels. However, that could be a bit trappy, as we were talking about. The Eels do like to go left, and they've got potentially 4 of the top 5 teams for this year, or very close to that in their first 5 weeks. He might average you 15.
Ugh. Yeah, I completely agree. We saw Sean Russell got the 1 game last year and picked up the 3 tries on the left, and then we know what Sivo can do. So yeah, very interesting. Just be aware of that one, guys, when you're getting towards team list and you see an exciting winger, especially if we don't see, there's obviously potential guys in Tafare and Khan Pereira from Titans, these types of guys that we've probably got in our sides at the moment. If they don't make the team and you see someone like this pop up, just beware it might be a bit of a trap there. We go to Gutho. Is there any interest in him? He's been priced up a little bit as well for some silly reason.
No, he might even be a sneaky one for that sort of round 6 or 7 period to buy. I think he's not going to score very well at all in the first month or so. And at that price, he's not really a gun keeper anymore. And just why would you have him in your team, really?
Nice. Coming from a true fan. Joshy Hodgson then comes in at 532. Over from the Raiders, coming off an ACL injury. There's also always some worries about how they go the first year back after an ACL, but priced down at the 37 average there. What do we see from him?
Yeah, he's pretty hard to predict, to be honest, because we don't know whether we'll get the good Hodgson who can score high 40s, like at the Raiders when he was sort of the second best hooker in the comp behind Cam Smith, or the old busted Hodgson who'll not do much and the Eels will fall out of the top 8. So I don't think he's really a great one to start with, but if he looks good in preseason, he might be okay. The thing is, I don't reckon he'll play 80, especially coming off an ACL at his age to start the year. Every chance that Rain or Arthur takes 10, 20, even a little bit more minutes off him and he works into big minutes. So maybe another one to look at maybe a month into the season.
That's pretty fair too. Yeah, you'd imagine Mitchie Rain gets a spot on the bench. Maybe Jacob Arthur doesn't even make it. I think you'd probably better off taking Rain. Yeah, it's going to be interesting how that all plays out for sure. And I agree with that. If you give him sort of 5 or 6 games and see how he comes out, and if he kills it, then you can pick him up. But otherwise, I think he's just worth letting through the keeper, as you'd say. Shawnee Lane at 53.9 price point. He got priced up 1.3 as well. It's the same as Gutho pretty much there. So a little bit frustrating because he was someone that absolutely took the world by storm last year, especially during the final series. He was their best player by far. What are our thoughts on him? Can he better last year's first killer year?
Oh, there's sort of a narrative both ways. The Tower of Power, I love him. Great buy from the Eagles a couple of years back. We were wondering why did we do that, and then all of a sudden he comes out and does this. Yeah. So, yeah, last year from back half of the year, he averaged like 60, and the Eels' left side is pretty intact. Like, we'll go Dylan Brown to Sean Lane out to Sivo on the wing, and that combination really hasn't changed. So with the inexperience of the other edge, potentially, they might even go more that side. Lane, I don't know if he'll average 60 again, but I'd say he'll at least match his price point and be a keeper.
Yeah, and as he said there, he could be a little non-origin keeper, someone to pick up in that middle period as well. There's a bunch of guys who are going to be interested in that time, so really keep a watch out as if any of these guys drop some cash over the first month or so. All right, we got Makatoa at 302. Do we see much of a chance with him?
I did until sort of more training reports have come out from Para that they're sort of looking at turning Murchie into a bit more of a middle with potentially Momasia, one of the other bench forwards. And I haven't seen many indications that Makatoa is actually going to be sort of replacing that new Corey role from last year where he played a decent amount of middle minutes from the bench. Right. If he is there in the 17 round 1, he's got 3 weeks of really good minutes before going back to that, maybe 25, 30 minutes. He could be a sneaky pickup, but watch for him for TLT and don't really worry about him too much before then.
That's fair. Mama Sia, do we think we're just going to leave him completely from the first round or 2 or 3 and just see what kind of role he's going to get if he's on the bench?
Yeah, I'd say so. From memory, his points per minute wasn't amazing, and with limited minutes from the bench, that's 2 combinations that aren't really good for fantasy. So even at base price, just leave him for a bit.
Yeah, that's very fair. We spoke about Moses. We got Jack Murchie. The 484 price tag is pretty high, and obviously if he gets that right edge spot, he has that games where he scored pretty well, like you're saying there, potentially a 38 to 45. Do we speak much about him now, or kind of work it out closer to team list?
Yeah, I think so. Closer to team lists because will he play edge? Will he play a bit of middle? We don't really know. And at that awkward price point, he's not someone you'd race out to put in your team for just like one report. So wait and see what happens.
Yeah, and Junior Polo there, we've got him at 570, which is lower than he has been in previous years, and a lot of fantasy players were actually interested in him last year and the year before. Do we see him scoring about this from year on year from now on, do we think?
Yeah, I'd say so. Good player doesn't always translate to fantasy, unfortunately. You could argue that he might get a couple more points, making a lot of tackles with that rough start, but outside of that, nothing really to get excited about.
Yeah, and Will Penasini obviously came out and played really well last year. Got a 38.4 average over the year. Do we see improvement from him?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Does he go to second-year syndrome where he has a bit of a regression, or does he build on that, gain some more experience, and push towards that keeper territory? It's hard to know because he is that explosive player. Does rely a little bit on tries, but I mean, most outside backs do, so it's not a real worry. I just think there's probably a little bit more safety in other players.
And the right side too. If he was at left centre, you're probably a bit more excited with him as well. But just to note there, he's on a contract year, so that could be interesting. And he does have Mitch Moses to his left. So, yeah, we'll see who ends up on that right edge for him. And if they're starting to dominate, then there could be a bit of traffic down that right. Mitch Rain we spoke about. Just have a watch on him. He's a bit too expensive for now. But if he gets cheap and then there's an injury to Hodgson, he will be very clearly on a lot of people's radar. Okay, any chat on Kai Rodwell and Sean Russell? We spoke about Russell a little bit.
Yeah, Kai Rodwell, he's one of our pretty good up-and-coming juniors. There's a chance he'll be in the 17, getting a couple of minutes from the bench. I don't think it'll be enough to make him relevant, but he'll be interesting to watch from an NRL perspective because he could be a good one.
Good. And then Russell had his one big game last year, so I see the 41 average. Any further
PPM
thoughts?
beast.
Wait. Sorry?
PPM beast, Sean Russell.
What was it? How many minutes?
He got like 41 in about 40 minutes before he went off with that ribs injury.
3 tries.
Yeah.
And so Simonson will just let go for a little bit. He's really not relevant anyway. And Mike Acevo averaged 40 last year. So obviously he's always that solid player around that 40-ish average. Not much to say on him either. You have a slight interest?
No, not really. He's just a fraction below that borderline keeper bracket, and at 571k, there's plenty of other guys you could get for that money. Guys like Adam Elliott and TPJ are only about 25k more expensive than that and could average north of 50. There's no real reason to buy Make a Sevo.
And to finish off this video, we have Zach Sini. Is he in the development squad as well? What an absolute career he had for fantasy owners last year.
Yeah, he's a bit like Declan Casey last year. He scored really, really well and then comes out with a negative score and disappears forever. So if you see him this year, don't instantly go, oh, he's a buy, because the Eels aren't the Tigers, but you don't know what you're going to get.
That was a fun game, though. We had all these mates in the corner. So it's something he'll never forget. I hope he does get his chance again, because he did have an absolute shocker in that game too. So that's the Eels wrap up. Where do we see them sitting this year, Lockie?
I think it's really going to depend on how well Josh Hodgson works with the Eels. If he goes back to some good form, I think the Eels can still probably make about 6th place. They do drop a bit because they've lost a few really quality players. But if he's really not that great, I reckon the Eels are going to be definitely in that 7 to 10 dogfight with like the Bulldogs, Broncos, Raiders type teams, and I think they'll be one of the ones to miss out, sadly. So here's hoping Hodgson has a career year to finish off with a bang.
Yeah, so it'll be Hodgson, we need to go really well, and then it'll be Dylan Brown, a little bit more improvement from him. Same with Lane, and probably a little bit with Penasini as well, and you'll probably see them still have a great year, right? And fighting for the top 4. But very interesting. That's the Eels squad, guys. And next time we get into this, it'll be the Knights, which is a very juicy team.